Tonight, grieving the stunning loss of former One Direction band member Liam Payne. The deadly fall from his hotel in Argentina.
This really is just shocking information.
The tributes and the outpouring of grief tonight from his fans. Justin Trudeau's explosive testimony.
I have the names.
The Prime Minister says Conservatives are at risk of foreign interference or actively helping other countries, a claim the Conservative leader calls a lie. An Ontario woman speaks out about allegations of gang sexual assault involving junior hockey players.
There were 8 players in that room. They just began taking their turns.
Wartime bombs buried deep beneath an Ottawa bog.
Stay on the trail.
And a wildlife snapshot worthy of world recognition.
It's a real honor to be able to show that world to people.
A Canadian photographer captures life beneath the surface.
It was very surreal.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. The entertainment world is mourning a shocking loss tonight. Liam Payne, the former singer of one of the world's biggest bands, has died after falling from a hotel balcony in Argentina. The scene earlier this evening. Stunned fans gathering outside the hotel in Buenos Aires, consoling one another, lighting candles and singing songs in tribute.
We can live forever.
Payne was 31 and one of the founding members of the band One Direction when it was formed in 2010. He leaves behind a child, sharing this photo of his son earlier this year, looking up at a billboard of his father. Let's get straight to CTV's Heather Wright. And Heather, what are you learning about what happened?
Well, Omar, Liam Payne had been in Argentina for at least 2 weeks. He was seen earlier this month at the concert of one of his former One Direction bandmates. And police say he fell from a third-floor balcony and died on the spot. The circumstances of Payne's death are still under investigation, but according to local authorities, police were dispatched to the hotel after a call about, quote, an aggressive man who could be under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Police found his body in the courtyard when they arrived.
This really is just shocking information to come out, especially him being so young in age, just 31 years old, and for it to happen in such a tragic way.
Payne shot to fame in 2010 as one of 5 members of the band One Direction, which formed when each singer auditioned for the British singing competition, The X Factor. The band broke up in 2016, each pursuing a solo career. Payne released a new single called Teardrops in March. The 31-year-old had been candid about his mental health challenges, including addiction, depression, and thoughts of suicide. In 2023, he revealed he had gone 100 days without alcohol. Payne leaves behind a 7-year-old son. Officials in Buenos Aires say they will continue to investigate and an autopsy will be performed. Omar.
All right, Heather, thank you. Turning now to the explosive testimony from the Prime Minister at the foreign interference inquiry in Ottawa today, alleging that he has names of members of the Conservative Party who are at risk or actively helping foreign nations meddle in Canada's democratic process. But Pierre Poilievre accused Trudeau of making it up. All of this coming in the middle of a diplomatic clash between India and Canada. Here's CTV's Judy Trin.
Our witness this morning is the Prime Minister.
Backed by classified information, the Prime Minister dropped his bombshell under oath.
I have the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians and/or candidates in the Conservative Party of Canada who are engaged or at high risk of or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference.
The warnings first came out in a June parliamentary report, but names and party affiliations were not identified until now. Other opposition leaders got security clearance to find out the names, but not Pierre Poilievre.
Is bewildering to me and entirely lacks common sense.
The Conservatives' lawyer pushed back.
Are you aware of the names of any Liberal parliamentarians, former parliamentarians or candidates that are at risk of being compromised by FI?
Yes, and for other parties as well.
In a statement, Poilievre accused Trudeau of lying to distract from a Liberal caucus revolt against his leadership. A group of Liberal MPs plan to ask the Prime Minister to step down next week.
Links tying agents of the Government of India to homicides and violent acts.
The political maneuvers come amid a war of words on the global stage. Both India and Canada have expelled top diplomats after the RCMP revealed an ongoing campaign of violence. Trudeau testified that at last year's G20 in New Delhi, he appealed to Prime Minister Narendra Modi to help investigate the murder of a Canadian Sikh activist. Hardeep Singh Nijjar advocated for the creation of an independent state of Khalistan, which did not sit well with Modi.
He responded with the usual response from him, which is that we have people who are outspoken against the Indian government living in Canada that he would like to see arrested.
The Prime Minister also testified that Canada is now better equipped to fight foreign interference with the passage of Bill C-70. The bill turns foreign interference into a crime and gives police and intelligence agencies more powers to disrupt the activity. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. An Ontario woman who was allegedly sexually assaulted by a group of junior hockey players is sharing her harrowing story publicly tonight. She says she contacted police twice, but in her conversation with W5's Rick Westhead, she says they told her they couldn't help.
I hope one day that I can find peace again with myself.
In 2014, when Anne-Marie was 22, she met a 19-year-old Ontario Hockey League player. After being in a casual relationship with him for 6 months, he invited her to join him and a friend to watch TV at the player's billet home. The parents were in the living room.
Waved and said hi, walked downstairs, they never asked any questions. And when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I realized that it was not just him and a couple of buddies. There were 8 players in that room.
Anne-Marie says she was led into the bathroom by the player who invited her over, and what started as consensual fooling around became a group sexual assault.
Next thing I know, more players start coming in. They just begin taking their turns, some more than once.
The next day, Anne-Marie asked her doctor for a test for sexually transmitted diseases. She did not get a rape kit. She told a friend about what had happened. CTV spoke with that woman and confirmed their phone conversation. The woman said she remembers Anne-Marie told her she didn't plan to go to police because some of the 16-year-old players had seemed to be pressured by the 19-year-old player who invited her to the house.
I thought it was my fault. I thought I was the one that was responsible because I had made the choice to go hang out with this guy and a couple of buddies.
Anne-Marie said she contacted the Ontario Provincial Police earlier this year. When she told an officer she'd been assaulted by junior hockey players, some of whom went on to play in the NHL, she was told there was nothing the OPP could do to help because she needed to report the incident to police where the alleged attack took place. But when she did that, again police told her to go elsewhere and report it to the police station closest to where she lived. Arun Maney is a former Crown attorney who says the police should have done better.
They should have offered to provide her the necessary assistance to put her in touch with the right people.
It wasn't just that police let her down. Her own lawyer gave her shocking advice that the alleged attackers could try to have her charged.
Some of these individuals at the time were not even men yet. They were teenagers.
Simone Jelinek, Anne-Marie's lawyer, has been involved in dozens of similar cases involving junior hockey players. She told Anne-Marie something surprising, that because of the age gap between her and her alleged attackers, there was a remote chance that she could be the one facing assault charges.
In this situation, because of the age gaps, that was more of a concern than if, for instance, all of the players involved were of her same age or older than her.
She says that because of a section in Canada's criminal code that addresses power imbalances, those age differences could be worrisome. And that warning left Anne-Marie thinking twice about pursuing criminal charges and filing a civil lawsuit.
She was the one who was in a strange place, surrounded by strangers. The idea that she would have taken sexual advantage of one of them in that context simply does not have the air of reality.
Crown Attorney Arun Maney insists the possibility of criminal charges against the victim are extremely unlikely. Although she didn't file a report with police, she did, after 10 years, finally tell her family, who were devastated with her news.
Complete and utter, just shock and disbelief. Why didn't I come to them? Why didn't I tell them?
Takes such courage to be able to speak about that trauma. W5's Rick Westhead joins me now. And Rick, this is a trauma she's been carrying for 10 years. And as you mentioned in your story, she contacted police earlier this year. And now months later, there's an admission.
That's right. I reached out to the Ontario Provincial Police as well. And after reviewing this call between Anne-Marie and a civilian operator with the OPP on February 28th, an OPP spokesperson confirmed that there was a lapse in policy. They say that the civilian call taker provided Anne-Marie with the contact information for the police service of the jurisdiction where this allegedly happened to facilitate a report. Standard operating procedure, however, states, with the OPP, states that the call taker should have personally connected Anne-Marie to the police service of jurisdiction and remained on the line until a call taker could confirm that a report was being initiated, and that did not happen here.
All right, Rick Westhead, appreciate your reporting tonight. Thank you. A new twist tonight in a decades-old murder case. The Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric, were convicted of first-degree murder in 1996 without the possibility of parole for the shooting deaths of their parents inside their Beverly Hills mansion. But now several relatives are calling for their release. CTV's Joy Melvin explains why.
We would much rather lose the murder trial.
The dramatization and documentary about the case 35 years later has shone a spotlight on the Menendez brothers. Convicted of the gruesome shotgun murder of their parents, Jose and Kitty, the brothers never denied it, but claim it was self-defense after years of being sexually abused by their father.
It raped me.
This abuse trapped them. It was painful and it terrified them. Their father's abuse shattered their lives and the family's lives, and the courts failed them.
20 members from both sides of the family made an emotional appeal for their release, saying the boys were victims but were mocked at their trial. No one believed a father could do that to a son.
The whole world was not ready to believe boys could be raped or that young men could be victims of sexual violence. Today we know better.
Relatives believe new evidence under review backs the brothers. A letter from Eric to his cousin 8 months before the murders. He wrote about the alleged abuse, saying, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy." Possibly a new victim, Roy Rosello, a former member of the boy band Menudo, claims Jose Menendez, a music executive, sexually abused him. 3 decades after their murder conviction, a new push for freedom.
It's time to recognize the injustice they've suffered and allow them the second chance they deserve.
Family members are pushing LA's district attorney to consider the new evidence, but it will be up to a judge to decide if the brothers are released or if they get a new trial. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. Israel has pounded parts of Lebanon, unleashing new airstrikes, killing at least 27 people. The strikes were in the south. Lebanese officials say a local mayor was killed in a strike targeting a meeting to coordinate relief efforts. Israel claims it is targeting Hezbollah. Elsewhere in the south, the UN mission in Lebanon said its peacekeepers saw an Israeli tank firing at their watchtower this morning. And as for the timeline of Israel's response to Iran's recent missile attack, U.S. officials now expect that to happen before the November 5th presidential election. Chaos in northern Nigeria after a fuel tanker crashed and exploded, killing at least 147 people. Video shows fire engulfing the truck with flames spreading along the road to the spilled fuel. Most of those killed or severely injured had rushed to the scene of the accident to collect the leaking gasoline. And a scare in Argentina as a man was walking while looking at his phone. Video shows a pedestrian distracted by his screen walking right into the path of an oncoming train. Fortunately, he steps back just in time. He was knocked to the ground, but as you can see, survived with no serious injuries. Coming up.
For the most part, it's empty. That's why they put bombs in the middle of nowhere.
Unexploded military weapons discovered deep in the mud. Plus, a winning wildlife photo rises to the top. The Department of National Defense says that unexploded bombs from the Second World War are buried at a popular nature reserve in Ottawa. It's unclear exactly how many are beneath the surface of the bog. CTV's Tyler Fleming has the reaction.
Flora and fauna fills Mer Bleu Bog,
Seen some blue jays, which is awesome.
where Canada's rich nature is preserved to be captured by Australian tourist Peter Rowland.
I worked for the Australian Museum there for about 20 years and I got into book writing, wildlife photography, and yeah, it's my passion. I love it.
But history here runs deeper than just a peaty bog. During World War II, Mer Bleu was a military practice bomb range where aerial munitions, bombs, up to 1,000 pounds were dropped from planes.
I was really surprised. It was an amazing fact.
The area used for target practice was nearly 900 hectares.
For the most part, it's empty. That's why they put bombs in the middle of nowhere.
But it's not known how many bombs were dropped.
My father-in-law was an Air Force guy, and he knew about it. He liked coming out here, so he told us about it.
In 1960, the military tasked a team to dispose of the bombs in the bog. However, that never happened. And because of this, the area cannot be cleared as free from explosives. So maybe it's best to
stay on the trail.
In 1964, the National Capital Commission acquired the land knowing about the bombs and that any future development would require expert assessment. And the risk of any explosion is low. The bombs are said to be sunken in the bog, which is up to 5 meters deep.
Can you imagine which tax do you want to pay that will allow for 1,000-pound bombs to be reclaimed from a bog? It's not going to happen.
Keeping this land as nature intended.
Having a reason to protect an area, I think it's a great opportunity.
Tyler Fleming, CTV News, Ottawa.
Still ahead.
Seaweed is a natural sort of biofilter that filters salt water and takes up the nutrients and the metals.
Scientists floating the idea of a seaweed solution for wastewater. A small Newfoundland town is looking to marine algae to solve a wastewater problem. It's become a costly issue for oceanside towns and cities across the country as they look to get in line with federal rules. CTV's Garrett Barry has more on the possible solution.
In Newfoundland's Conception Bay, only a few seagulls give any indication of what's bubbling just underneath the surface. Wastewater flowing out of a primary treatment plant into the ocean.
This is very similar, very common for all coastal communities.
But new rules have put this town and hundreds of others like it across the country on notice. By 2040, Ottawa will bring in requirements for more processing to remove chlorine and solids. All that means new equipment.
We have a population of 27,000 people. Our annual budget is $40 million. An investment, our last price tag for the treatment plant was $110 million.
Even big cities have struggled with the costs to replace or upgrade their systems. A replacement plant in North Vancouver, needed in part to meet new federal standards, has seen costs balloon to almost $4 billion. That's why Conception Bay South is getting creative. Next month, they'll plant seaweed just outside the sewage outflow to help clean up the wastewater.
Seaweed is a natural sort of biofilter that filters salt water and takes up the nutrients and the metals and the kind of things that are found in wastewater.
Holdfast NL, a seaweed farming company, is hoping to prove this concept in Newfoundland and Labrador.
It looks right on paper. Of course, it doesn't always translate to the real world, but we're going to test that and see if it's a real world solution.
Even if it's unlikely that seaweed could provide all of the upgrades needed, the town of Conception Bay South says it's hopeful that it could be a valuable and thrifty part of the solution. Garrett Berry, CTV News, Conception Bay South.
After the break.
It was very surreal. I've been entering the competition since 2011, and it's the pinnacle of any wildlife photographer's dreams.
Award-winning Canadian images bringing wildlife into view. Canadians came up big at the so-called Oscars of wildlife photography in the UK this year. The subtle but powerful images capture some stunning moments in the wild. CTV's Rachel Crowe spreading wings on the winning shots and the photographers behind the lens.
I couldn't believe it. Absolute sheer disbelief.
This year, the winning shot came from BC's Shane Gross, a marine conservation photojournalist who focused on what's just beneath the surface.
Photography is just a great way to bring that world to life. Not everybody can go snorkeling or scuba diving, so it's a real honor to be able to show that world to people who otherwise wouldn't see it.
The competition is considered the Oscars of photography. Jury chair Kathy Morgan says the winning photo features the unexpected.
It's a species that you wouldn't expect to see in the competition, these tadpoles, and it's the energy and the light and just that sort of sense of excitement that you almost feel like you're there, and it's just this rush of water and tadpoles going past.
Gross almost didn't believe he won.
It was very surreal. I've been entering the competition since 2011, and it's the pinnacle of any wildlife photographer's dreams. So to have my dreams come true that day was mind-blowing.
Canadian photographer John E. Marriott won in the animal portraits category, showcasing a lynx family.
There's only 11 categories, so it's an animal portraits is the single most contested one. It gets the most entries by far. So it's pretty amazing to know that I had won.
His advice to aspiring photographers is just start taking pictures. Nature is right outside the door. Gross says his main motivation for his submission was to help bring more attention to wetlands.
They wanted to encourage photographers to pay attention to these areas, to bring them more love and hopefully more protection.
Rachel Crowe, Spreading Wings, CTV News, Edmonton.
And that's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.